when I've thought about this before of like, why would I be willing to put myself out there time and time again? And I think it was because like I had these people I could always count on. I always had these people I could lean on. And so I think when we think about setting our organizations up for success and setting our people up for success, we have to think about like, how are we making sure that they know like we've got them? Because that's going to allow them to take those swings.
Welcome to Challenger X. I'm Jerome Dwight. Today I speak to Sarah Wells, a Canadian Olympian and hurdler. Despite enduring a major injury that kept her out of competition for months, Sarah pushed through to represent Canada at the 2012 London Olympics and later became a Pan Am Games medalist. As a founder of the Believe Initiative, she now empowers others to believe in what is possible and move toward making their goals a reality. I'm inspired, and I hope you will be too. Sarah Wells, what an honor it is to have you on the show. An Olympian, a Canadian icon in sports, and also such a great inspiration for young entrepreneurs, female leaders, aspiring Olympians. So I want to go back to the early days and your early experiences. What influences did you have in your life that drew you to athletics?
Well, honestly, I think I got into sports largely because I wanted to have a sense of belonging. And when I got to high school, I wanted to have your crew, wear matching jackets, high five in the hallways, like I wanted to have my place. And so I tried out for like every single sports team, like volleyball, soccer, field hockey, badminton, like you name it, I tried out. And I got cut from every single one of those teams until a high school teacher saw me in gym class and realized like I could run. He saw me like run up to a soccer ball, get there, do nothing with that, and then like accelerate away again. And he's like, you can sprint. Like, I want to teach you how to hurdle. And so, I wasn't the kid who grew up and was like, I want to make the Olympics one day. Like, I like didn't even think I was athletic, And so it was very serendipitous of how this kind of all happened, where I was just taking swings. I was just, maybe I'll try this sport. Maybe I'll try this sport. And a lot of the times it was not the answer until I found track and field. And, with the guidance and support and coaching from my high school teacher, who was actually my coach for the next 9 years until we made the Olympics together, thanks to him, he put us on the trajectory that sent us to the Olympics years later.
Incredible insight. So I want to unpack now. So you were cut from virtually every team, and here you are, still, trying out for different things, and then you get into track and field. So how did you start to think about resilience, even at an early age where, you were dealing with rejection, really, and you keep coming back? So how were your early beliefs about resilience forming?
I think that in the business world, people will talk a lot about like psychological safety and creating an environment and a culture that allows employees and individuals to take risks that lead them to success down the line. And I have a really wonderful relationship with all of my siblings. There's 4 kids total in my family. I'm number 3 of 4. And my eldest sister, I give her a ton of credit because she was part of this organization called One World. And she went away to Nicaragua, where she stayed for 9 months with a kind of family that needed assistance. And she became essentially like a third source of income from the parents or as a parent. And she had younger brothers and sisters while she was there. And she got to see how the community really prospered on coming together and supporting each other. And so when she came home from that experience, she was like, sat all of my siblings down, and she was like, guys, we need each other. And so she started planning these things we called siblings days, like every month or, every 2 months kind of thing. And it would be just the kids. My parents didn't come. It was just the 4 of us. And Athena really like created this culture of like, I could count on my siblings and my siblings could count on me. And she was 8 years older than I was. And still is, but she at the time was 18, and I was 10. And so when my 18-year-old sister says, we're going to hang out, I'm like, oh my God, this is the best day of all time. Like, I think this is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. And so she starts creating these siblings days, and she treated me this way, which meant I treated my younger brother this way. And we just created this like amazing bond where like I always had them no matter what was going on in my life. And so when I've thought about this before of like, why would I be willing to put myself out there time and time again? And I think it was because like I had these people I could always count on. I always had these people I could lean on. And so I think when we think about setting our organizations up for success and setting our people up for success, we have to think about like, how are we making sure that they know like we've got them? Because that's going to allow them to take those swings.
I want to talk about that early influence you had from your teacher, who really pushed you into track and field. How important was that individual's impact on ultimately your Olympic career? And how can we learn from that even in a business setting?
I think like having someone who believes in you is so essential to helping you see what's in yourself. And so I had a high school teacher that saw me in gym class and said, you can run. And I think that even if, that we see that skill set come up occasionally ourselves, we sometimes don't give it enough credit. We're like, well, that's easy for me, so that can't be valuable. Or, maybe I think this is interesting, but I bet no one else does. And so we discredit that thing that might be our strength. And so having someone in our lives to help us put a spotlight on the things that make us unique, that the things that are our differentiators, and help us become the best version of ourselves, like that is something that we need to do more of. Like, how can we show up as that mentor for other people? How can we show up as that person who breathes belief into someone so that they begin to see it themselves?
So 2010 comes around, in 2011, you are accelerating your career in athletics and track and field, and then you get a stress fracture, right? And talk to me about how that affected your mental state, and then how you put a plan together to start to come back.
Yeah, my whole life had been centered around like, we're going to try to make the London Olympics. And then I get this stress fracture, and I was supposed to sit out for only 3 months, and it ended up taking 9 months. And so everything was like crumbling down around me. My whole identity was wrapped up in having this goal come true. And so now when it was possible that this never came to light, that this thing I had been chasing for nearly a decade was potentially just going to end up evaporating in front of my eyes, like I was devastated. And ultimately what I ended up doing was leaning on my incredible support system that I had around me, my coach, my teammates, my family. And it wasn't easy. And I wasn't like from the get-go, like, that's okay, I got this, by any means. But certainly I had them kind of sit with me and say like, okay, like, look, there are still things we can create some influence on. And yes, we can't sprint and hurdle, but we can do core work. We can do arms so that you have a better arm drive, or you're a better hurdler when you are cleared to run. And I think shifting my focus on the things where I could still create influence was essential in having me still create momentum, still move towards that goal, so that when I was cleared to run, it wasn't like, way off in a black hole. Like, I still was moving towards it, and it put me in the best position possible to achieve that thing. So it was, the support, it was the focusing in on things that I could still control. And I think just like a steady belief in myself that like, okay, if I can get through this, like one of the hardest times, and these, I have every reason to believe it's not going to work out, but I'm going to keep pushing forward. Well, that shows me that I have more of a strength than I ever thought possible.
So I know you speak to a lot of business audiences. What are some lessons we can take from that experience into the business world?
I mean, I think that anytime you're in an organization and something happens that you never expected, or it's completely undesirable, and you're like, I do not want this to happen, it's like, we can choose where we put our focus. And you can choose to focus on the thing that's happening, what feels like to you, or you can choose to say, okay, here are our new circumstances. what can we still create influence on? Where can we actually spend our time, energy, effort, resources, and still get to the outcome we desire? Or in this, how do we redesign what the outcome should be now that we have more context on like what is actually happening? And so I think we can all, and I still catch myself doing this, where it's so easy to get caught up in the things that are out of our control. And it's so easy to feel like that things are happening to you, but you always have a choice in the mindset you adopt when you're facing your challenges. And so how do you make an active effort to choose the mindset that's going to actually allow you to keep moving forward, rather than choose the mindset that ties your hands and keeps you completely stagnant to where you're at?
I totally agree with that vantage point. It aligns with my beliefs around moving forward, progress over perfection, despite the circumstances. It's so important to keep the momentum going, even when you're dealing with some challenging crisis. So now you get to 2012, you're cleared, and you're going in to compete in the Olympics. Talk to me about what was going through your mind. Were you fearful, anxious, second guessing yourself, or were you full of confidence? Where were you at?
On the day of my Olympic race, the qualifying rounds, honestly, so much had gone into helping me get there. Like a few months earlier, it was like, Sarah, you might not even make it. So then to have achieved this goal of actually getting to the Olympics, by the time I got there, it was kind of like, well, let's see what I can do. Like where else can I go that 6 months ago I didn't think was possible? And so I had some weight lifted off me, because this big, daunting, like you must qualify thing, I had checked the box. And now it was kind of like, well, I thought that was the ceiling. So now clearly I don't know what I'm capable of. Clearly there's so much more here. Let's go see what I can do. And so, I thought I would get to run in the qualifying rounds and that would be it. Like I probably wouldn't make it on any further. I didn't even have Olympic standards 6 months before I was on that starting line. And so then to get to the games and kind of just give it everything I have, I ended up making it on to the semifinals and becoming, top 24 in the world. And so I went from being unheard of, no Olympic standard, on the sidelines for 9 months, to then, I eventually was ranked top 20 in the 2012 Olympics. And so that was super exciting for me to just like continuously realize that like we don't know what we're capable of. We think we know where the ceiling is, but it's like when you really go for it, like when you keep showing up, when you bring that unwavering sense of belief, like so much more is possible than you even realize.
A common thread amongst many entrepreneurs and leaders that we have on the show, something that I share passionately about, is being open to that unknown. How far can we take this business? How far can we take the limit? And I love that it applies in athletics. You are a walking testament to that. And then you reach the peak of your success. You go on to the 2015 Pan Am Games and you win a silver. So take us through that experience.
Yeah, after going to the Olympics, kept getting faster and stronger. And as we got closer and closer to the next quadrennial of the Olympics, we're in 2016. Well, 2015 was then a proof point year for me. And that was going to be, okay, let's go to the Pan Am Games. Let's win a medal. Let's show the world that like next year, I'm going to win a medal at the Olympics. And so my coach and I, we had poured our heart and soul into the training plan that we thought was going to get us there. And I ended up standing on that start line, and in the lane next to me was the #1 ranked woman in the world. And so I was like, okay, well, I mean, track and field's pretty absolute. So I guess I'll just be seeing her in front of me the entire time. And I kind of made that decision before the gun even went off. And this ties into kind of what we were just talking about, where I was just like, okay, well, I'll just be seeing her in front of me. And when the gun went off, I kind of don't hear or see anything for 3/4 of the 400 meters, because I'm just executing the plan. And when I get to the second last hurdle, I come back to reality and I realize that I'm winning. And in my brain, I'm like, what? Sorry, no, I can't be winning. Like the number one ranked woman in the world is in this race. Like I can't be winning. And I have this second of doubt and I'm like, where is she? She should be here. Like, why isn't she not? And when I get over that hurdle, as we're approaching the final hurdle, she charges forward. She gets gold and I get silver. And I often, when I deliver my keynote speeches, I talk about how I can't tell you how often I wonder, could the medal I'm holding now been gold? Could it have been gold? And I think the biggest obstacle on our pursuit to excellence is the limiting beliefs we place on ourselves. And so I have this silver medal and now it's just a wonderful reminder to me of like, if we can remove those limiting beliefs, then we can discover more and achieve more than we ever thought possible.
That's an incredible example of how we place limiting beliefs in ourselves. How can we take those experiences into the business workplace, where we as the corporate community can learn a new mindset of pushing past those limiting beliefs?
I mean, I think it's becoming aware of them, first of all. Where are you putting those limitations on yourself? What are you saying to yourself? And then I think giving yourself little, like in my case, it is the silver medal. Like it is a tangible thing that I am reminded of like, don't limit yourself, don't limit yourself. And so, whether that's like a sticky note you put in your office, a thing that you put on your computer display, like where do you bump into something to make sure that you ask yourself, like, am I limiting myself? Am I limiting myself? I think you kind of have to have it as a constant reminder because we're so easy to revert to limiting ourselves rather than saying, oh no, I can totally do that. And so we need to have that constant reminder.
One thing I experience when I'm mentoring a lot of young leaders, early up and coming leaders or entrepreneurs, is they all share somewhat of a lack of self-confidence, a little bit of a little bit of imposter syndrome, if you will. Am I good enough? Am I really good enough to play at this level, right? I'm sure you experienced that going through all of these challenges and then getting into the starting blocks with the world's #1 hurdler. So what are some lessons we can learn from when we have self-doubt that inevitably creeps up?
Well, I think it's a little bit of kind of what I've talked about, like kind of the lessons on how we remove self-doubt is recognizing when you are limiting yourself. It's the recognizing that we are capable of more than we realize. And I think it's about fostering self-belief by reflecting on like where you've had challenge in the past and how you've overcome that, and where you've risen to the occasion to give yourself the confidence of like, no, I know how to do this. Like I can do this. And in my case, like looking back on my Olympic experiences, I can bring that forward now, going and in whatever obstacle I'm encountering and say, okay, yes, this feels hard. Yes, right now I'm feeling like I'm not the person who's going to be able to do this, but I remember thinking that before, and that's not true because that then made the Olympics. And so I think entrepreneurs and business owners need to look at like, well, where were the milestones I might have felt this before, and then how do I overcome that, and see in myself that I've already been in this spot before, and I've moved through it.
I couldn't agree with you more. Even in my own experience, even starting Boomerang FX, when we were, 5 individuals in a little WeWork, thinking to myself, what have we done? We've invested millions of dollars in a little startup in the middle of a pandemic, and always second guessing and living with that self-doubt until you start to see a few wins, and then you start to have to always talk yourself into believing that you can do it. And then you stack one small victory over the other. And today we're in 5 countries and growing a business globally. So I want to switch gears now to some of the other things you're doing, which are so inspiring. You established the Believe Institute, which is doing some incredible work, Believe Initiative. How does that reflect on your personal journey, and what's the mission?
Yeah, so once I finished competing, I had these two stories of like there was an experience I had where I was sidelined and I overcome it, and then I believe in myself and I make the Olympic Games. And then for the Rio Olympics, I like believe in myself, I am resilient, I do all the right stuff, and I ended up actually not qualifying because I tear my hamstring just before. And I was so nervous that after I did not qualify for the 2016 Rio Olympics, that no one would ever want to hear me speak again, that my friends, would stop liking me, that the world was going to be flipped upside down. And actually what ended up happening was that my sponsors at the time were inviting me to speak. I would share how I like what happened when I didn't qualify, and people were coming up to me after the fact being like, that was the most inspirational story I've ever heard. Like, I needed to hear that today. And I now realize that the story that people needed to hear more was about how I did not qualify for the Olympics and what lessons I was taking away from that. And it gave me, I think, new perspective to recognize that like I could tell people it's important to believe in yourself. It's important to find strength in those stumbles that we have. And I had so much more credibility in doing that because I wasn't just the person who was resilient, did the right stuff, and had it work out. I was now also the person who did all those things and had it not work out. And so I still stood true to that messaging of like, but if we believe in ourselves, we can get farther than we've ever thought possible. And so I started the Believe Initiative to help organizations and institutions kind of like all over North America. And so I probably speak at about 40 to 50 events a year in Canada and the US. And it's so, I think, rewarding to hear how my story can now resonate and impact people all over. And it's funny that you think once someone's achieved a certain level of success that like they've moved through, the self-doubt. Oh, they know how to do that. You speak to business owners who are running companies that are like worth millions of dollars. And you think, oh, well, they must not deal with this. And then I share my story. I have that person come up to me and say, last week I was thinking this, I needed to hear this today. And you're like, you, the person who's running the company for 50,000 people? Like, sorry, what? And so it's just really powerful and meaningful to me to see how purposeful my stories can now be in helping other people achieve their greatest accomplishments as well.
Sarah, you have a real passion for helping people learn from not necessarily your victories, but your failures, right? Which resonates really with me because the path to success is usually ridden with a lot of failure. And what can corporations and entrepreneurs learn from their failures, their early challenges, sometimes repeated over and over again? What are some of the things that we should be looking for in adversity, in the pit of failure?
Where's the lesson? Where's the strength that you discovered in that experience? Because you can always pick those lessons up and apply them to your next opportunity. And maybe here's a quote for your book that I always say is that hard work doesn't always lead to success, but being resilient will always lead to another opportunity for it. Because if we choose to take that failure and throw our hands up in the air and go, all right, I'm done. Well, yeah, now everything you've done before that, you don't get to actually snowball into anything new. Like you just like hit a dead end. Instead of saying like, okay, well, how do I take the skills or the experience or the new network I've gained or the perspective I've gained from that, and how do I apply that into the next evolution of my success? And I think if you are able to do that when you fall on your face, when things don't go to plan, when things are flipped upside down, if you can do that, well, then you'll find your next opportunity for success. And I think that's something that the highest performers can do really well, is recognize that they're like, again, another quote here is, I end my keynote with, success or setback is not an end point. It's a through point, because it's not about whether it goes to plan or not. It's about like, okay, and how am I taking this and moving forward? And so I think that's one of the things we can all do and learn.
Sarah, how much emphasis do you put on goal setting and acting on goals and execution? Is that a big part of your approach to conquering certain initiatives or objectives?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that goal setting is so important because it's the magnet. It's the thing that helps draw you towards the thing that you want. But we shouldn't put so much emphasis on the outcome because success can take on a lot of different forms. And it's not always the definition that we originally set out. And so goal setting is important. Don't get me wrong. I woke up every day chasing a gold medal, chasing becoming an Olympic finalist. So goal setting, I'm not saying outcomes are bad to focus on outcomes. They help you feel inspired. They help create a tailwind to get you excited about the thing. But we need to make sure that we are redefining success beyond the outcome and focusing in on the fact that it's about who we become in the pursuit of that goal. And so I love goal setting. I think it is important, but I think we should be diversifying our perspective of what success means when we set that goal.
Okay. I think finding yourself in the midst of finding the best version of yourself in the midst of pursuing a goal really resonates with me. As we wrap up, this show is about challengers and people that just, don't allow resistance and obstacles to get in their way. So I want to ask you, like I end the show with every guest that I ask, in your opinion, what makes a challenger? What are the characteristics that challengers have? Would love to share with the audience.
I think the characteristic of a challenger is someone who's willing to remain persistent, someone who is constantly going to pick those lessons up and apply them to the next opportunity. It's someone who's not going to take the first no as the closed door of okay, give up now. And challengers find a way, really.
That's a great way to end the show. Challengers find a way. Sarah Wells, an honor to have you, our first Olympian on the show, and business speaker, keynote speaker, and great influence on our company and our team. And we thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.